Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Jay Bales podcast. I'm your host, Jay Bailey. And today's episode, I'm going to talk about the Epstein case and why I think it may be a bigger story than what we first perceived. Jeffrey Epstein is a mystery, and nobody really knows how he got his money. And he is a billionaire, or a perceived billionaire, and there's very little evidence of how he made his money. And he also was found in possession of several fake documents, several fake dossiers, fake passports, and it's just really interesting, and I think it's a bigger story than what is being portrayed in the mainstream media. Now, there's a lot of mystery behind this man, and so let's go ahead and let's listen to what RT America is saying.
America, our nation's capital. Hello again, everybody. I'm Rick Sanchez. So, the U.S. government has successfully deflated and devalued the currencies of both Venezuela and Iran. However, if the global exchange were cryptocurrency and not the dollar, would they have been able to do that? Think about that question, because it's important. And keep it in mind during a segment that we're going to have coming up on what the Trump administration's newest attack is on cryptocurrency. It'll all come together. We're going to begin with Jeffrey Epstein, the man who got a light sentence in Miami after being accused of molesting as many as 36 girls. 36! Because his plea was kept secretive and under wraps. But now he's facing a trial that is going to be covered by seemingly reporters from all over the world. And it's in New York, no less. It's kind of really the same case as the one in Miami, but with a different venue and a hell of a lot more attention. Which is probably why a federal judge today threw the proverbial book at Epstein, telling him that he will not be getting out of jail, that he will not get bond, and that he will stay in jail until his trial is over and he's either found not guilty or he goes to prison, maybe for life. There are two aspects of this story that I want to share with you that really take it beyond the headline, right? What you're hearing every day on regular television now.
Now, two interesting points. The judge in the case set a no bail order for Epstein, meaning his crimes must be worthy and high enough to warrant such action. But then the second question is, will Epstein sing? Will he sing? And if he does sing, what is he going to sing about? And what does he know? Now, Epstein is, I've never heard of him. Most people have never heard of this guy before. And so I just find it interesting that all of a sudden Epstein is in the news. He's being propped up by the media. Why is it that all of a sudden this guy is making headlines? That's the question you have to ask yourself. Why is this guy suddenly making headlines? And I think it's quite interesting to note, why is this guy all of a sudden in the news? The reason is because he knows something. That's why. This guy knows something. And that's what I believe. But he's in jail, so nobody really knows. But will he sing? Now, let's continue on and hear the host talks about how he believes that Epstein is a intelligence agency. So let's go ahead and listen.
Works. Not here. One, who are the famous, powerful people who we know Epstein entertained? And what did they see, or what did they do during those, quote, wild sex parties attended by underage girls? And will Epstein sing to avoid spending the rest of his life in prison if he has to? So they got to be particularly worried today, right? This morning. Two. And this is the other story getting a lot of traction today. Is it possible that Epstein, because of the newly released information about him regarding his mysterious travels with a phony passport, as we reported here a couple of days ago, may have some type of intel ties to either our government or possibly another government seeking to blackmail the men who attended those parties, those, supposed sex parties? Look, as conspiratorial as it sounds, given the nature and the reach of this story, the unexplainable details of his deal with the feds, the stamps that were found on his passport, we determined that you deserve to at least hear the facts wherever they may lead. We are going to be joined shortly by our correspondent, Michelle Greenstein, and journalist Ben Swan. This is the new...
Okay, now I must say this is very bizarre. This is one of the strangest cases in the media I've ever seen. This guy is a mystery. Nobody's ever really heard of this guy before. Not the majority of us anyway. And why is this guy so rich? Well, many people are speculating that many believe that Epstein gained his money through secrets and blackmail. That Epstein was part of Mossad intelligence, Israeli intelligence services, in that he was sent as a plant to blackmail politicians, celebrities, CEOs, rich and powerful people, and that he was planted on purpose in order to blackmail, and how he would go about doing that was getting them drunk and then sending an underage girl into their room and then videotaping it and extorting them, blackmailing them. And many people believe that that's how he earned his money. That's how he became so wealthy. I mean, the guy owns, or at least was staying in, a $77 million mansion. Now, wrap your head around that. $77 million mansion. Okay, most people do not own $77 million mansions. Even the wealthy, a lot of wealthy people do not own houses that big, do not own estates that are that expensive, for the most part. I mean, even, modest billionaires do not stay in houses that are that expensive. A lot of them, 50 million tops, for their house. $77 million, that's a lot of money for an estate. And so, who is this guy? How did he make his money? The books say that he was a hedge fund manager for Victoria's Secret, I think it was. Don't quote me on that. But that he managed money for firms and people like the Victoria's Secret CEO. But that's it. That was the only legitimate company on his books. So how do you make so much money if you only manage one firm, one company? I mean, $1 billion is a lot of money. And to make it off one company, managing a firm for one company, that is a little bit out of the realm of possibilities. So, was he an intelligence agent? Was he a double agent? And if he was, that is incredible, in my opinion. That is a incredible story. What does he know? And how does he know it? And this confirms that Epstein, if this is true, this confirms the whole Illuminati, aspect that we've all heard about. The Illuminati. I'm sure you guys have heard the whole Illuminati story, and supposedly there's a certain group of people throughout the world that control everything, that run everything, and they have these weird initiation processes, and they have these strange parties that includes underage girls. It includes sex with underage women, and all this weird sex acts and stuff. If the Epstein case turns out to be true, then that confirms that the Illuminati kind of does exist, at least in my mind. That's why I think it's such an interesting story. So, anyway, tell me what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you guys agree that this is a mysterious story? Who do you think Epstein worked for? Did Epstein own anything? I mean, how did he make his money? And if he was an owner of a company, or if he owned a percentage of whatever, that there would be record of it. If say Epstein owned 7% of, I don't know, Nike or something, there would be a paper trail. But none of that. So let's continue.
News with Rick Sanchez, where we believe it's time to do news again. Jeffrey Epstein owns a private plane, a home in Paris, resources all over the world. There's much about him, though, that remains mysterious. But this we know. He can no longer slip through the cracks of justice without at least reporters knowing all about it, and he will have to get used to his jail cell because he won't be going home to his $77 million mansion, at least not anytime soon. That's new, right? We have team coverage of this story. News with Rick Sanchez special correspondent Michelle Greenstein joins us with the very latest developments. And RT contributor and veteran journalist Ben Swan is going to be joining us with his analysis. Michelle, let's get started with you. Take us through what happened today and what else you have found out.
Sure. Well, what happened today is essentially that he was denied bail by this federal judge. He requested the ability to await his trial at his Upper East Side mansion. The judge said, no, you're a danger to the safety of others, including your accusers or alleged victims, and even some prospective victims. So he got a hard no on that. But in terms of what else we know, it's looking more and more every day as if this hedge fund was actually a front for something else. As we we know, this fund is offshore, right, in a tax haven at the U.S. Virgin Islands, which means he didn't have to report how much money was on the record. You don't have to report what kind of holdings you have, right? And another curious thing is that the only public client, the only person known to have been a client of this hedge fund is Leslie Wexner, a billionaire for sure, the CEO of Victoria's Secret, but no one else is known to have been a client of this hedge fund. So here's what an actual hedge fund manager, Doug Cass from Seabreeze, had to say about this. He found this quite curious. He said, I went to my institutional brokers, to their trading desks, and asked if they had ever traded with him. Not one institutional trading desk, primary or secondary, had ever traded with Epstein's firm.
Let me stop you, because
That's big, because in the Bernie Madoff case, the same thing was said. Nobody had ever heard of Madoff. Nobody had ever traded with Madoff, and yet Madoff was one of the key players. He was one of the wealthiest hedge fund managers. He seemed to be immune by the ups and downs of the market, and there were several major players who knew that Madoff was running a Ponzi scheme. So I wonder if the same can be said about Epstein. Was Epstein running some type of Ponzi scheme? Maybe he was running a Ponzi scheme for some shadow government somewhere. But all we know for sure is that he traded off the U.S. Virgin Islands. That's where his headquarters was set up, if you want to call it that. And all these major companies, these global massive companies, they all have firms set up at the U.S. Virgin Islands. All of them. They all have headquarters, or at least offices, in the islands, in the Caribbean. You know, all of the major corporations do this. And Epstein was no different. So I'm sure Epstein knew a lot of the movers and shakers. I'm sure Epstein was very much a part of that circle. And nobody is talking about Epstein. None of the players want to talk about Epstein. None of them. You have to ask yourself why. You know, why does nobody want to talk about this? Now, you know, it's important not to jump to conclusions on this. But is this really a surprise? Is this really a surprise? I mean, the wealthy, they have access to whatever they want. They can literally have sex with anybody they want. I mean, these women throw themselves at these rich guys. All of them. If you go on Tinder or if you go on any of the dating apps, all these women are practically begging for a rich guy to swoop in and take care of them. These guys can have any type of women they want. They can have black women, they can have brown women, they can have white women, old, young, big, tall, fat, small. So why would it be any different with Epstein? Except Epstein didn't want that. He wanted to go a step further, and he liked them underage, right? And you have to wonder, you know, who else was involved here? Because if the feds are involved, that usually means a conspiracy. And is it really a surprise that this rich guy had an appetite for young women? I mean, is it really a surprise? You know, the rest of us guys, not to sound all MGTOW, but MGTOW is popular on the internet. But not to sound MGTOW-ish, but you know, the rest of us guys, in the middle class guys, we don't get sex like that. We don't get women throwing themselves at us the way these rich guys have it. I mean, these rich guys can date and screw pretty much anybody they want. I guess it just pisses me off. It just pisses me off that these guys really are above the law. They get away with whatever the hell they want. The only reason he's in the news now is because something is happening. He is being used. Epstein is probably being used. I'm not saying for sure, but there is a reason he's making headlines. Because otherwise, he would just be swept under the rug and never reported on again if there wasn't something else going on, some other big conspiracy. And so you have to wonder, what is going on? It's just a shame. I mean, again. But anyway, let's continue on.
I want to be fair and I suppose give Epstein the benefit of the doubt from a legal standpoint, right?
Sure.
Is it possible that everyone's running from the ship because they're afraid to be associated with this big rat?
Oh, I mean, that's definitely happening. I mean, you see that being covered in the corporate press nonstop.
So, I mean with these traders who are saying, I never did business with him.
Oh, yeah, of course people want to distance themselves. But in this case, we're talking about an institutional trading desks. They have no records of trading with Epstein's firm. So, of course, on a personal level, you have, some of his friends or so-called, social acquaintances distancing themselves in that way. But I think this is different.
But this is a record. What you're describing is there's a record of him trading. And,
there's no record, exactly.
But they're finding no record.
Exactly. Which is why many are saying that this may have been a front for some sort of blackmailing operation. Even one of Epstein's alleged victims, Victoria Jeffrey, one of his accusers, said this. She said, he got girls for Epstein's friends and acquaintances. Epstein specifically told me that the reason for him doing this was that so they would, quote, owe him, and he would, quote, have something on them. So this is leading some to speculate that he may have been part of some bigger intelligence operation. It's possible that he's just a very sick individual, right? And for some reason enjoyed watching other men abuse children.
Or both.
That's of course.
Okay, but you know what? How did Epstein get a hold of this underage girl? Like, who was the third person involved here? Because there had to be there had to be an agent. There had to be some type of negotiator between the two. Epstein didn't just pull up in a Mercedes and swing by outside of a bus stop and ask some girl to get into his car. I'm sure he didn't do that. I'm sure there was some other third party that introduced them, that knew about this. And let's just be honest. I mean, this wasn't the girl at the party who looked to be 18 or 21 but turned out to be 14. I don't think that's what this is. I think this was actually intent. I think Epstein intended on doing this to young girls. I don't know. I don't know much about the case. And I'm just saying, it sounds pretty sick. Who else was involved? And is it really a surprise? To me, it's not a surprise. I mean, girls nowadays, again, go on Tinder, go on Bumble, go on these dating apps. These women are practically throwing themselves, begging for a rich guy to come swoop them up. Okay? It's all over the place. Okay? Who else? Who was the negotiator? Who was the moderator between the two? That's my question.
Both. He could be a sick individual who was used perhaps by either foreign, as a foreign asset.
That's a good point.
Or CIA asset.
That's a good point, but it does stink of a more professional blackmailing operation when you talk about how big this thing really was. And let's bring it back to that controversial plea deal, right, from Alex Acosta, who was the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Florida at the time, who, as we know, resigned Friday. He said, even he himself said, I was told Epstein, quote, belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone. So this has led some to question, okay, intelligence asset for who? So let me take you to Robert's...
Can I just stop you for a minute and challenge you on that one? I don't believe anything Alex Acosta says, because he's going to say whatever he has to save his ass.
And you certainly, you know, are justified in doing that, of course, but this isn't him, this doesn't make him look good in any way. You know, understand what I'm saying? So that it comes from him, I find significant. So let me take you to Robert Steele, who's a former CIA and military intelligence officer.
Okay.
This is his statement. He says, I remain of the view that Jeffrey Epstein is a Mossad clandestine operations officer, assisted by Mossad clandestine operations officer Ghislaine Maxwell, and that their mission is to do precisely what they have been doing: entrap U.S. politicians, judges, celebrities, prosecutors, and corporate leaders.
And most governments will do that.
That's scary. That is scary. Entrapment, that is never talked about. Never talked about. But it is illegal. You are not allowed to entrap somebody and then arrest them. At least you know, it says in the U.S. code that a agent or a police officer is not allowed to entrap somebody and then arrest them. Now, the weird thing is it happens all the time. You know, it happens all the time, and it's really a gray area there. But this has been going on for a long time. I just find it really interesting that now they have chosen to make this into a story. And what is the reasoning behind it? That is my question.
This, if they could, it just so happens the Israelis are really good at it.
Right, I mean, what could be a better asset than someone who has all this dirt, right? This quote-unquote blackmail on a lot of powerful players. And even Philip Giraldi, who's also a former CIA and military intelligence officer, said this. He said, here's how it would have gone if it were true. Mossad would have exploited Epstein's contacts, arranging their cooperation by having Epstein wining and dining them while flying them off to exotic locations, providing them with women and entertainment. If they refused to cooperate, it'd be time for blackmail, photos and videos of sex with underage women.
So the idea would be that any powerful man...
This is crazy. I mean, this is just, I mean, is it really surprising? I mean, this almost confirms the existence of what everybody has long suspected, that there is a group of elite people who are flying around the globe, who are raping young kids, who are basically just living in a Garden of Eden of earthly delights, sexual appetites, with access to whoever they want. And the rest of us, we are basically pawns. We actually have to, if a regular guy wants a girl and wants to go out with a woman, he has to put in all this effort. He has to go online, he has to woo her, he has to take her out, he has to buy her drinks, he has to do all these things just to get her attention. And even then, she, at the drop of a hat, could be gone, But then this guy flies in and can basically, because he has a lot of money, get whatever he wants, And is it really a surprise? Not really. What's surprising to me is that the media is reporting on it. That's the surprise. Let's continue.
Be he tycoon, prime minister, prince, or former president or present president, if somebody was to say to them, I have video of you with a 14-year-old girl.
You do whatever they wanted.
You own them.
Right.
They are
In
now
theory.
officially owned, in theory, and this is the concern in a case like this because it involves so many. Stay where you are. Let's bring in Ben Swan. Ben, you've been listening to the conversation. What sayeth you?
Yep. Well, first of all, you guys are touching on some really important points, but a couple of other things to add to this conversation is simply this. Number one, you mentioned about Alexander Acosta and saying you don't believe what he's saying, so he'll try to save his butt.
Right.
I agree with you, but the statement he made about Epstein being intelligence was actually not made when the heat was on him. It was actually made prior to his confirmation hearing to become labor secretary. He was asked in an interview by the Trump administration when they were vetting him, saying, is this whole Epstein thing going to cause us problems? He said, it's not going to cause us problems because I was told to back off, that Epstein was above my pay grade, and that he's some sort of intelligence.
Great point.
So it wasn't when he was under this heat. That's important. Second thing is this, this Maxwell connection is kind of shocking. If you really take a look at what's going on with it, Robert Maxwell, the billionaire from the UK who owned a newspaper empire there have been allegations and claims for many years. He died in 1991, by the way, in a completely bizarre way. He was standing naked on his yacht named after his daughter, and then jumped in or fell into the ocean near the Canary Islands and either drowned or had a heart attack, and there isn't even a clear cause of death for him. The claims have been made over the years that he was Mossad. In fact, the British Foreign Office believed that he was absolutely a double agent, and they believed that he was Mossad. So if he was Mossad, possibly, it's also possible that his daughter is connected to Mossad, and that's how she's connected to Epstein, because the two have been together for years, but don't seem to have any relationship other than her being his fixer, which is a very strange relationship for the daughter of a billionaire to take.
Adding something to what you're talking about right now,
if that's true, and it turns out that this guy has very close ties to government, especially Israeli or United States government, this really discredits the authority of the United States government. This really discredits and puts a hamper on the efficacy of the United States government, if that's a word. And, the rest of us are supposed to follow the law. You got to remember, these guys are part of this government that dictates laws to the rest of us. And yet, they seem to be immune from their own ideology, from their own lawmaking body. So it's just it's a shame. It's a sham, really. It's a complete sham. If it turns out that this guy was that close to power, all that does is that reiterates how money and government operates, how the two are connected, how there is a shadow government, how they are meeting in clandestine areas, such as the Virgin Islands, and they are getting together, they are shaking hands. The government and private industry, the financial industry and government are in cahoots with each other, and they have these weird sex rings, these weird sex orgies, and there are just women throwing themselves at these guys because they have so much money. And these girls would do anything to be a part of that life, to be able to get money off these guys. You got to remember, when you're worth billions of dollars, a couple $100,000 is nothing. But to the rest of us, $100,000 is life-changing. $100,000 can change somebody's life. But to these guys, $100,000 is nothing. You got to remember that.
Michelle had mentioned to me, Maxwell was essentially his only partner, client.
Right, so the daughter of Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell, pretty much acted as this recruiter and even sometimes a participant in this sexual abuse. But I think Ben is absolutely hitting the nail on the head. We have this father of his partner in crime with very strong ties to Mossad, who's been accused of being an Israeli agent by many journalists, including Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Seymour Hersh. And in a book called Robert Maxwell, Israel's Super Spy, that actually really details both his life and death, a very strong case is made for the fact that he was actually assassinated by the Mossad after he became a liability.
All right, let me push back on both of you here a little bit. Could it be that Maxwell just happened to be one of his many clients, as you know, can happen in most cases?
Are you talking about the daughter?
So I'm talking about both the daughter and Maxwell, whoever it was that he's being tied to.
No, because Maxwell. Okay, go ahead, Ben. Yeah, sorry.
To you.
Well, no. I was going to say, so Robert Maxwell was not a client in any way. But here's something interesting, Rick, that because I know how you like to go down this rabbit hole, right? Mm-hmm. Think about this. Robert Maxwell, after he died, he is a British citizen, was given a state funeral in Israel. The Prime Minister got up and said that he had done much more for Israel than anyone could ever know this day during his eulogy. So Robert Maxwell was clearly tied in ways to the state of Israel that go far beyond what the average person would be, even the average billionaire. He was connected very, very heavily to that. As for his daughter, in terms of her involvement, again, her relationship to Epstein is so important because, again, here's a woman who seems to go around...
Well, first of all, who even knows if that's really his daughter? It could be a plant. He could be sent from Israel to live in a house with this woman, who's supposedly his daughter. Get in there, wine and dine, go hang out at the bars, go hang out at the clubs. The wealthiest areas of the world, the wealthiest areas of the country. Get to know this person, get to know that person, and you're in. And, it's not really out of the realm of possibilities. I could see that happening. I could see Mossad or CIA or MI6, planning somebody in the wealthiest areas of the country and saying, you know what, you two, you guys are agents, but let's pretend like you guys are father and daughter and go live in this house. And get to know the neighbors, get to know this person, get to know that person. So, yes. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and end this. I just think it's interesting. I think this is one of the most interesting stories all year. Maybe all decade, It's an interesting piece. I'm interested to know what you guys think. Do you guys think it's interesting? Do you guys think it's not interesting? Do you think there's more going on here? Let me know in the comment section what you guys think. Like, comment, share, get the word out. If you guys like what I do, hit the thumbs up. Let me know. And we'll see you later. Thank you.